This week, we go to Roaring Camp to talk to Tom Schreve.
And we've got some news, and we have some of our favorite finds from the internet.
This is Railroad Showcase.
Welcome to episode 1. I'm Greg Robinson.
I'm Graham Robinson.
We are a father and son team who is producing this online railroad program.
This is going to be a variety TV show that focuses on news, education, and entertainment.
Each week, we're going to cover topics from the railroad industry, from pop culture, and the preservation movement as well, rail fanning, model railroads, you name it.
Anything from standard gauge down to Z-scale, we love it.
Contemporary trains, historic trains. We're interested in steam and diesel, electric, gravity, horse-drawn. If it has a flange, we're interested.
What about maglev? Maglev doesn't have a flange.
Okay, anything that even looks like a train, we're interested. We have a 2-part interview with Tom Schreve, chief engineer. This week, we're going to start with part 1, where he talks about the engines.
Roaring Camp is in Felton, California, near Santa Cruz, around 350 miles north of LA and about 70 miles south of San Francisco.
Railroad out of Aurora, California. She operated for them for about 5 years. She was sold by them to the Swain Lumber Company, which didn't really need the engine. Actually, Swain bought the Butte and Plumas and the railroads around it, but they didn't need an engine this size, so they sold this engine to the West Side Lumber Company. She operated West Side Lumber Company number 7. She operated for them until the end of steam at the West Side. She was then taken and put on display at Sonora, California. At which point, that was thought to be the end of her actual operation. Then in 1976, Glenn Bell, who bought the West Side operation, traded this engine for another locomotive and brought her back into service. It operated for them for about 2 years, at which point they closed down the West Side operation again, probably for good that time. And in 1985, we acquired the engine. She's been here ever since. She's had some major boiler work done. She's had some major things worked over on her. We replaced all the axles in driving centers a couple of years ago. She's in pretty good shape right now. She's about as big an engine as we're going to be ever able to get over this railroad. The 2 is right here. She's in the throes of some heavy boiler work, some heavy engine work. She just got a new set of tubes, and we worked over the trucks on the engine this last winter. Hopefully by the end of the day today, we'll have all the brick in the firebox so that we can actually operate the locomotive. This engine was built for the West Side Lumber Company for their operation out of Tuolumne City, California. She was built in 1899 by the Stearns Manufacturing Company of Erie, Pennsylvania, and she operated at the West Side Company until the end in 1963. In 1963, she walked up a ramp onto a flat car under her own power. When we got her to Roaring Camp here, we built up steam on her, and she came down off a ramp under her own power. So she literally has not been in a year when she wasn't on the active roster. She's never been restored. She's been rebuilt a number of times, but never restored. We'll carry close to 250,000 people a year. This is the Dixiana Shay. She was built in 1912 by Lima Locomotive Works, Lima, Ohio, and operated on 5 other outfits before she came here in 1962. We rebuilt her at that time. Again, she walked herself onto a flat car, not under steam on this particular instance, but with compressed air. And then she was rebuilt to operate with an oil fire instead of a coal fire. She's been here since 1962 when she was acquired. She is now 107 years old, or rather she will be 107 years old this next year. Just about the right size machine for us. She's a 42-ton Shay locomotive, 2-truck. She goes around the curves the best of any of them, and she's got about as much power as anything we have. See, Shays and Heislers and Climaxes were all built so that they could go in either direction at almost the same. A lot of outfits never turned their engines. They just ran them up and back. Okay, this is the third engine here in the shop right at the moment. This is the Kahuku. She is a Baldwin tank engine built in 1890 by the Baldwin Locomotive Works and shipped to the island of Oahu, where she operated on the Kahuku sugar plantation from about 1890 until just about 1945, 1950, somewhere in that neighborhood. I get conflicting reports on that. She was then sent to the Sutro Museum in San Francisco, put on display in their big picture window in the front of the building, with a beautiful sign on her. Said Ferries and Cliff House. Didn't say anything about being one of the first locomotives to operate in the state of Hawaii. No, Ferries and Cliff House. Okay. They needed an engine which looked like a Ferries and Cliff House engine, and this particular locomotive fit the bill. In 1966, the Sutro Museum started closing down, and they were selling their collection off. And Norman Clark, my boss, heard about it. He needed a little engine for shuttle service. And so he bought this engine. And they took the big picture window out of the front of the building and rolled it out onto a truck. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, she was off the truck on the Roaring Camp rails. At that point, Norman went to dinner. When he got back from dinner, the boys had looked her over. She was in good shape. They put a fire in her. She was under steam. after having sat in the museum for the better part of 16 years. I go you one better. She was burning the oil which was still in her tank. They'd never emptied the tank. Currently she operates on special occasions. We don't use her very often. We have her out during the Thomas the Tank Engine event. We have her out during the Steam Festival. She's more or less the shop queen. Well, most of the time she would go to the top of the hill with one of the other engines, most of the time one of the small diesels shoving behind everything. She doesn't have air, so as a result we can't really use her on the hill very much. She's got steam brakes on the locomotive, but she doesn't have an air pump. She's not powerful enough to really go up the grade by herself, with any passengers, that is. She's powerful enough to get herself in one car with 22 people on it up the grade, only if the conductor's pushing. She wasn't built for grades, she was built for flat. She's a flatland machine, and she does a very nice job here on the flat and makes all sorts of happy noises. 40 is the youngest locomotive on property. That having been said, she was built in 1958. She was operated at the Fontana plant of Kaiser Steel. She had about 1,000 feet of track where they poured the steel ingots and where they stored the steel ingots. And she was on a piece of straight flat railroad. We acquired her in the mid-70s, and we've had her ever since. She's a nice little machine. She does what we ask her to. She can pull 2 cars of passengers up the grade by herself. So she's a nice little machine. She goes out almost every day with track work and various things. This morning we used her to switch the yard. The switchback on the railroad limits us to a locomotive and 6 cars. If you want to put any more cars up the grade, you have to cut the train in 2 at the switchback. And that's what we use this for. She goes on the back end of the last 2 cars of the train, get up to the switchback, cut the last 2 cars off, roll downhill a little bit. Main part of the train goes up the hill, and then she follows. This is our boneyard back here, where we keep spare parts and various things which we want to hold on to. You don't go out and say, oh, well, I'm going to start a railroad, I need a locomotive, I'll go find one. No, you have to buy these things when they're available. So this engine is waiting for time in the shop. It's about 6 months older than the Dixiana. It's about a year younger than the number 7. It is a 32-ton Shay locomotive built for the Cumberland and Big Sandy Railroad. And we acquired it from a private collector, and it needs a great deal of work, including we have to re-gauge the engine because it is a 42-inch gauge engine and we have 36-inch gauge. And as for re-gauging, there's this. This is a Climax locomotive, which we're going to have to completely redo. It's a 50-ton engine. It'll be slightly bigger than Dixiana. It was the last Climax number that was built, basically. It operated at Swandale, West Virginia, and was one of the last Climaxes operational, which scares the hell out of me considering I know how many bad parts are on this thing. The engine operated on a number of short line railroads, a couple of short line railroads in the east for a while, and then when Norman Clark purchased this engine, it hadn't been run in about 3 years, and I know why. The boiler was bad, and it's remarkable that it actually ran as long as it did. Eventually, we will get this thing rebuilt and regauged to 36 inch. It's right now at 4 feet. We're going to have to completely go through this entire engine. I don't think there's a part on it which we're not going to have to do something to. There's a boiler for it. It's sitting over here. This is a different boiler than the engine came with. We're going to do some work on that to modify it to get onto this boiler. This engine is in the hands of a nonprofit, and the nonprofit is going to start working on it in the next couple of years. Norman Clark acquired that lathe for the railroad just before he passed away. The thing was, it was so big we never had any place to really put it. So there it sits. We acquired this from Spreckles Sugar in Spreckles, California, when they were closing down their big sugar mill there in Spreckles. And while we were getting this and putting it on board the truck to bring it here, the guys at Spreckles came and said, "Oh, by the way, we have these 9 flat cars which we don't need anymore. Would you be interested in them?" At that time, we were rebuilding the Big Trees Pacific line over here. We didn't have any equipment. So Norman Clark said, "Sure, we'll take the 9 flat cars." Well, we'll probably never use this lathe, but we use one of the 9 flat cars at least every day running on the Big Trees.
I love that the Kahuku was fired on the same oil that was put in her tank 15 years prior before they put her on display.
What a great story.
Yeah.
What a great story. And I like the fact that he told us they're hoping to start restoration on the Climax sometime maybe in the next couple of years. It would be great to have a Climax running on the West Coast.
Definitely. We got to go back.
I want to go back. I would like to go back to Roaring Camp and do a full feature on the history of the railroad and a deep look at their operations today.
Definitely. Let's do the news. TV station WITN reported early January 1st, a consist of molten sulfur tank cars derailed near the crossing of Stilley Station Road on their way to the Nutrien Aurora phosphate facility in North Carolina around 1:50 a.m. At least 7 cars derailed, and though there was a small fire from the accident, it was quickly put out. Authorities say there is no danger to the nearby community. The news report indicated the derailment happened on Norfolk Southern tracks, but miningtechnology.com indicated that the 30-mile branch is company-owned. According to Mining Technology, the Aurora facility is the largest phosphate mining operation in the world, using the molten sulfur in its chemical plant. It appears that the cars involved were these 45-foot, 15.7 thousand gallon specialized tank cars built by Greenbrier. Molten sulfur has to be transported at nearly 300 degrees Fahrenheit. These tank cars have 6 inches of fiberglass insulation and built-in heating coils, effectively making them giant thermoses. You can find a link to the Greenbrier information and the incident area on Google Maps in the show notes below. We're curious where the sulfur originated from. If you know, leave a comment.
There's a lot going on in passenger service around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The Dallas News gives a favorable report that a train full of officials made the first run on the TEXRail line.
This is a big day for North Texas. For the first time ever, DFW Airport will be connected with downtown Fort Worth by rail.
Good morning.
This billion-dollar project runs 27 miles from downtown Fort Worth through North Richland Hills, Grapevine, and on to the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The Trains Magazine article by correspondent Haley Enoch points out these Statler train sets are the first that the Swiss company has assembled in the U.S., meeting the Made in America requirements for the federal funding. In a second story, several other news sources gave thorough coverage that DART, the Dallas Area Rapid Transit, has just announced who will be building its new Cotton Belt line, which is expected to cost $750 million. It's the same folks who just finished the TEXRail line. It's a joint venture between Herzog and Archer Western, which is a part of the Walsh Group. The line will run from Plano through Richardson, Addison, and North Dallas to the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, where it will connect with TEXRail. The majority of the funding will be through a federal loan. The FRA has a program called RRIF, the Railroad Rehabilitation and Improvement Financing. Whether the line will be fully double-tracked has yet to be decided. They hope to be carrying passengers in 2022.
At the end of November, a train full of South Korean government officials and experts crossed the DMZ into North Korea. The Associated Press reports that this is the first train to do so in over a decade, as it prepared to make an 18-day trip surveying the less advanced track network around North Korea compared to South Korea's well-established system, which includes several high-speed lines, some of which have a max speed of almost 200 miles an hour. This excursion was made in hopes of one day soon having the two countries once again connected by regular rail traffic. Normal operations are contingent on improved relations and statutory changes.
The Eureka Springs and North Arkansas Railway is a 2.5-mile-long tourist line. On December 28th, they took delivery of a diesel switch engine purchased from Holcomb Cement in Westlake, Louisiana. The 500-mile trip was made on a lowboy. The General Electric 25-ton critter was built in 1950. In 2006, a 260-horsepower Cummins engine replaced the original prime mover. At some point in its life, another 5 tons of steel was added as ballast to give it a little more grab, making it a 30-ton engine by weight. Our thanks to conductor Keith Brenton and owner David Dortch for this news item. If anyone has any history or interesting stories about this engine, please let us know in the comments.
On January 1st, the renowned Rose Parade took place in LA, and as an exciting addition to the lineup this year, the Chinese American Heritage Foundation made a large float representing the two engines that met at Promontory Point, the 19 and the 60.
And their float, Harmony Through Union. And here we see a celebration of the Transcontinental Railroad.
The Transcontinental Railroad would not have been possible were it not for the toil and tenacity of 14,000 immigrant workers of Chinese heritage who teamed together with immigrants of Irish, Greek, and African descent. Side by side, hand over hand, a robust immigrant population laid rail after rail and pounded spike after spike.
The Golden Spike
was finally hammered into history on May 10, 1869, completing the Transcontinental Railroad.
Yes.
Unfortunately, around 9:45 that morning, the float was disabled due to a fire, possibly caused by a transmission fluid leak.
And you have to go with the mistake.
You
There's
gotta
nothing
go with
wrong.
the
It's a
flow.
part of life. You can't be perfect like a prima ballerina. Is it on fire,
Is there a
Lord?
small fire?
Because I'm seeing a lot of smoke. Oh my goodness,
really
there's a
is
fire
on
marshal.
fire.
Holy
Well,
mackerel.
obviously we hope everyone is safe. but this is kind of exciting. I mean, there's a little bit of a fire. Well,
This is very serious.
This is a serious situation. Also, too, I don't know if we can get a shot. They're picking up the glitter on the parade
There's
route.
a lot of
Streamers.
smoke coming. People are helping the...
They're picking up the streamers, which is great to get that all done so you don't have to do it later.
Oh, this is wonderful.
Bum, 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 bum. Jan saves the day. That is the biggest tow truck I've ever seen.
I've never seen...
While no one was injured, the Foundation may be fined for disrupting the parade.
So we want to take a second and talk about the structure of Railroad Showcase. It is our intent to give a significant portion of every week's material to people for free who want it that way. You don't have to sign up for anything if you don't want to. Just go to our channel on YouTube or to our group page on Facebook, and you'll be able to get material from us every single week. You know, please like and subscribe, but there's no commitment whatsoever. But we do have plans for you to become a member.
So we have 3 membership levels. There's Fast Mail, Silver Spike, and Gold Spike memberships. The Fast Mail membership is free, and the only thing that requires is that you go to our website, rrshowcase.com, sign up, and that just adds you to our email list, and we send you good stuff every week. Now, our Gold and Silver Spike memberships, those are paid. The Silver Spike membership has our full weekly episode with more good stuff, and the Gold Spike membership, again, has the full weekly episode with the best stuff.
So, if you feel like becoming a member, we would love to have you. Just go to rrshowcase.com and follow the instructions. Something else we want to offer to our viewers is what we're calling the product of the week. Each week, we're going to try to find a product, either something that we've produced or something from another manufacturer, publisher, producer, and offer it at a very steep discount. This week, we're starting out with a video that we had produced on the McCloud River Railroad number 18. The Steam on the Mountain DVD was one that we shot back in 2005. It has some good footage of the McCloud River Railroad with an engine running on its home rails, the very forests that it ran through a century earlier.
Normally, this DVD sells for around $20, but this week we have it for the discount of 40% off. That comes to $11.95, and it will be available at that price all this week until Sunday, January 13th.
Part again that you know what the railroad's going to do and what you need to be doing. If you get the boiler too full, it won't steam as well. If you get it too empty, you can't keep up. So we're going to have a little trouble starting up, which made for the show a little bit. Then, of course, you got to have a little balance when you're getting the brakes released and when you're taking off, so you get a little combination of things going on there. Yeah.
So this week I found 2 things that I want to share.
I found 2 things as well. I'll start. So, in older times gone by, rail was joined together using fish plates and bolts. Nowadays, the more modern approach is to weld the rails. But you can't just weld the rails with an acetylene torch. It's not strong enough. So, the way that they do it nowadays is with thermite. We found this great video. It was originally 10 minutes. It was posted by a guy with the channel name of A44488 on YouTube. And he did a great job of capturing the whole process from start to finish.
Yeah. About 3, I think.
You know, I liked at the end of his video where he brought out the fact that that whole process from start to finish took less than 2 hours. So the train that went through on that piece of track came through, they closed the line down, and they made that repair, did the weld. The next train came through in less than 2 hours.
Really quick.
Okay, so the first piece I want to share is what's neat in model railroading, and this is a YouTube channel that's put up by Ken Patterson. He's been doing this for the model railroad hobbyist for about 8 years, and it's fantastic. He has all kinds of great hints and tips, and he does some wonderful tours. In the January show, he has a simple how-to weathering technique for steel freight cars. It's an easy technique with good results.
And it deposits small amounts of oils all over the freight car in a random pattern. Make sure I'm clean. And I want to pull my streaks straight down on the freight car. I don't want them to go crooked. I want to try to keep them as straight down as possible.
Then I also really liked his visit to Don Meeker's HO Scale Rocky Mountain line. This is a really large layout that has been 14 years in the making, and it takes 30 people to run it properly during an operating session.
And before you build the bridge, you got to build the scenery, and before you do the scenery, you got to do the backdrop. So this is one of the first areas that we finished.
No, this looks fantastic. There's got to be a ton of rock here. Now, is there...
This is Centennial City, by the way, instead of Denver. This is one operating position here. We have a whole gold mining branch with a lot of gold.
Ken produces videos every week. If you're a model railroader, you may want to check them out. We've got a link to this video and all the videos in our episode down in the show notes.
Donner Summit is one of the biggest snow battles in the world. Jake Mill posted this great video of a rotary snowplow in action. Jake managed to get some great shots. I love the one where he got the snowplow throwing the snow right off the edge of the mountain. It's incredibly satisfying.
I can't even imagine how far he had to hike or how cold he got getting those shots.
No kidding.
Okay, so now let's go to a snow battle that's a little bit smaller. You know, I love the main 2-footers, and I found 2 great videos that I want to share. A few years ago, Eric Shade posted this 9-minute montage of Wiscasset, Waterville, and Farmington, number 52, clearing the line. And about a year ago, a user that goes by the name Willie1960 posted this short piece of number 9. What a fantastic shot.
So this was the first episode of Railroad Showcase. We really hope you enjoyed it.
If you'd like to see this show continue, please find us on Facebook and YouTube and click like and share, leave some comments, and by all means, please subscribe and follow. And let us know what you thought we did right. Let us know what you thought we did wrong. Your feedback really does matter to us.
It really makes a difference. If you want to keep seeing the full weekly episodes, go to rrshowcase.com and become a Gold or Silver Spike member. Again, thanks for watching.
And like the old hogheads were taught, keep your hand on the throttle and your eye on the rail.